Welcome to the County Manager's Report. I'm Lloyd Higuera, and with me is County Manager Larry Werner. Larry, welcome.
Thank you, Lloyd.
Good to have you here, and we're going to be talking about the April 7th meeting of the Douglas County Board of Commissioners. And they did spend quite a bit of time talking about water. I don't know what it is when water comes up, the conversation goes on and on. And what they were talking about was Sierra Country Estates water system. They heard a status report on the system. They also approved a hydrogeological study, amended the interim monthly water rates, selected option 3 for the new water rates, and then they continued a resolution on the dedication of water rights. So I know that's a lot. That's a big bundle of things, and I think it was about, 2.5, 3 hours?
It was quite lengthy, yes. I think it was good. It seems to me that we got a lot of understanding that between the residents out there and what the county was trying to do, and I think the board also understood better. So it probably was okay to have that long of a dialogue, but it was long, yes. And ultimately, as you stated, what came out of it was, first of all, a modification of getting water to the Sierra Country Estates subdivision. The existing wells there, they've had difficulty with those, and they had looked at some alternatives of either re-drilling wells on site or doing some other things. And the initial alternative had been to connect to the Job's Peak water system and then bring water into Sierra Country Estates. There's some legal issues going on with the Job's Peak water system that had the county then take a different look at drilling another well on Sierra Country Estates, which appears to be probably the best alternative because it deals with the Sierra Country Estates folks, but then also gives the ability for the county to supply water to other units as needed in the area. So it's kind of a backup system. So that was item number one, and it basically was an alternative. The cost of the Sierra Country Estates folks stayed the same as the initial alternative adopted, I guess, a year or so ago or months ago. I'm not exactly sure when. And then the second item of Sierra Country Estates was to do a test well to find out, make sure we can put the well where we want to put it and how to design the well. And that just was a modification of an existing contract for test wells. So that was fairly straightforward, or should have been. Sorry. And then item 5 was the third item, which is 4, 5, 6. Item 6 was to look at the option on developing rates for Sierra Country Estates. We wanted the board to take a look at what elements they wanted to include in the rate structure, and basically we came up with a simple version of we'll fold them into the Carson Valley water system, which means that it's really straightforward. It provides the best rate to the customers, and it then folds all the water systems together. So, although there was again quite a bit of discussion on that one, and there will be a little bit of an impact to the Carson Valley water system as we try to even out all these rates, but it was a fairly insignificant number. But we will be sending out notices to all the users of the Carson Valley water system, talking about the rate discussion coming up in June for the Sierra Country Estates. So.
Okay. Now, Sierra Country Estates is a county-owned water system.
Yes, it was a private water system that had issues with water quality, and I think might have been some system failures. I'm not exactly sure about that, but I do know there was a water quality issue. So the county was basically not quite ordered to, but close to it, to step in and take over the water system and get it up to speed. So
I see. So now it's part of the Douglas County water system.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
And this one water system serves what, 17 homes?
There's currently 17 homes, and I think there's 22 lots altogether. So at max it would be 22 customers. So.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
So there's a lot going on there.
Right.
And I guess it will be continued too, won't it? I mean, there'll be more discussion on that resolution.
Correct. Yeah. Once it gets into the rate structure, then we'll have to do that. And then the last item that was kind of bundled with those other three was the usage that's occurring and how does that relate to the water rights that are applicable to that particular development. So the concern is that the actual use out there was exceeding what the water rights were available for that. And the county had taken some steps in the past to add more water rights to the system, but it looks like it was going to be a continuing problem. So they were trying to look at a method of either offsetting the cost to everybody for those few that use a huge amount, and then how do we either acquire more water rights or... Anyway, it got to be in a pretty heavy discussion, and And we could see it was kind of going sideways, and we actually came up with a couple of options during the meeting, and we thought, you know what, time out. We just better table this for now, and let's go back and rethink how we might want to approach it and bring it back at a later date after we have a chance to kind of sort through it. But it will come back in some form, probably in the form of a rate surcharge for those folks that go beyond what is allowable under the water rights, and then we figured out how to deal with that. So
Okay, so we'll see that one back.
that one will be back, yeah.
Okay. Well, also at the April 7th meeting, commissioners accepted recommendations from the county manager and county engineer on feedback that was provided by a Citizens Flood Control and Roads Task Force. And what did they come up with?
Yes, that was, this was a follow-up to a workshop that was held a couple of weeks ago with the county commissioners and the county engineer and the county manager to talk about the recommendations and take any public input. But essentially what it did, which I think is pretty interesting, is to actually take a look at the 2011 master plan update on the environmental resources and conservation element. I can't totally, which had identified some recommendations and policies, and this task force basically recommended that those stay in place and that we actually begin a program to try to implement the recommendations within that. And they're pretty basic. You know, the obvious goal is to provide the residents of Douglas County with increased safety from flooding and stuff. And then then you go through a series of very specific recommendations about how to try to identify what the service level is for the county as it's involved in flooding. You know, in other words, how involvement is a county versus a private property issue. Where does the county step in? How do we fund that? So there was a series of recommendations that they went through that we'll probably take a look at putting together in an implementation program, identifying what those are specifically and make it clear, and then try to do an approach of saying, okay, here's what implementing this recommendation would mean, both from a regulatory and a cost standpoint. So again, a lot more to come on that when we actually take this now and try to boil it down into an actual implementation plan.
And I guess cost would be a key element, wouldn't it? Because the county really isn't set up to fund flood control.
Right, and that's one of the major issues. There's, you know, with all that's been going on with the gas tax funding that's happened, you know, everything's been focused on trying to do road improvements, those kinds of things. And there just simply hasn't been any capacity to take care of major stormwater. If there's flooding that occurs, obviously we were able to get grants that help go back in and fix it and repair it. But we really have nothing out there to get ahead of this situation and try to be preventative in some of these. So one of the things we'll look at are funding mechanisms. And in reality, you know, we might be able to, through the current year's budget, kind of take some of the monies that are being held aside for one-time things and maybe do some initial groundwork to get things rolling, but ultimately we need to come up with a sustainable annual funding source to do these programs. You know, without getting into too much, but one of the things we're looking at was obviously a utility, and then for capital major improvements, then probably would need to look at special assessment districts within a certain area or some combination thereof. But those are really the only tools we have at this stage.
So I can see this will be coming back probably more than once or twice.
Oh yes, right. What I want to try to do is like say lay out a program and get buy-in as to where we're headed, what we're going to try to do with these, how we go forward, and then ultimately put the whole package together.
Okay. And did you feel like you got pretty good response from the public, the Citizens Task Force? I mean, they...
I did, yes. I think what they did was good. In some respects, and we will include more public involvement, I think there needs to be, you know, the kind of an open forum for people to come in and talk about it. The task force was kept pretty limited to kind of focus in on this, but at some point we need to make it an open dialogue with the whole community. And that, I think, will start fleshing out some more items that go on here. But.
Okay. Also, on April 7th, commissioners decided to send a letter of support for funding a conservation easement on property surrounding the Dangberg Home Ranch. And this is really kind of an exciting one here.
It really is. I mean, it takes one of the major agricultural properties in the valley that you see when you either come in from north or south looking into the valley, and and looking at the green, the Dangberg Home Ranch, it's 32 acres along the river, and if this should go through, then that's preserved basically forever as ag green property, and I think that'd be wonderful. It's this river corridor and this greenness that I think we have all of us living here.
Sure, it's attracted many people here.
Yeah. So obviously, we're writing letters of support to go to the BLM on the Southern Nevada Lands. I can't remember what SNPLA stands for. Southern Nevada Public Land Management Act, where we might be competing for funding to buy this easement. So hopefully that'll happen.
And that's a tremendous piece of property that is right adjacent to all of the core of the Carson Valley here. So that would be green forever. That's fantastic.
True. Yes, it is really a super project. Hopefully we can make it happen.
Okay. And commissioners also approved authorizing the issuance of general obligation bonds. These are limited tax sewer bonds in the amount of $5,550,000 for financing sewer projects for a county-owned sewer system. What are some of those projects?
This is due to the, I think we talked about at the last meeting, where the North Valley plant is undergoing an expansion, increased capacity. Right now it's running at to the level that by the time we get through with the expansion, it'll have the increased capacity for future growth. I think the total project is $7,550,000. About $2 million of that will come from the redevelopment area number 1, which is up at the North County, the Topsy Lane area, and then the balance of the money, the dollars that you just mentioned, the $5,550,000, will be paid through low interest loans from the state. I think the interest rate we saw was around 2%, maybe 2.5%, but the actual payment of this will be through the utility rates, and I believe those rates are already in place to allow this to take place.
Yeah, they've been discussing those rates
Excuse me.
for quite a while. I mean, I think they're pretty well set now.
Right. Yeah, the exciting thing about it was the interest rate itself on the bonds that were much less than we anticipated, so that'll be savings there.
Well, very good. And commissioners did approve a resolution placing a question on the general election ballot that's asking whether to impose a sales and use tax increase of 0.25% to fund capital projects for the Douglas County School District.
Correct. This is an odd one. It's basically a law was passed in the last session that provided for funding of schools, but the way it read was that the schools had to go to the county, and the county would actually put it on the election, on the general election. So it's kind of, people will look at this as a county-led initiative, but really we're just the processor in this case, not necessarily, or not the receiver or the generator. But there's a whole series of steps that need to happen. First of all, there had to be the approval of the ballot question and direct things, to start happening for the county clerk, who's our elections officer, to begin the process for establishing committees that would then write the pros and cons and then the rebuttals and all of that to be prepared and put on the ballot for the question for the November election. And I think right now at the May 7th meeting, they did approve the question. On the April 21st meeting, they'll have the second reading and approval, and then on May 5th, we'll actually look at appointing committee members. So I guess what we want to get out at this stage is anybody who's interested in becoming on the committee to write the pro or con side of this particular ballot issue should contact our county clerk, Kathy Lewis, and let her know. And then she will put together the committee and send it on to the board for approval. Then at that point, there's a whole series of steps on writing the questions, the pros and cons, exchanging them with the other committees, getting all the final approval there, then back onto in front of the Board of County Commissioners in June, so that can be on the ballot in November.
So if a person is interested in writing a pro or a con on this particular sales and use tax increase that'll be on the ballot, they should get in touch with Kathy. That's the best way to do it.
Absolutely. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I guess, is there any more information available on the website maybe, or I know they had an ad in the paper.
I saw the ad. I didn't see. I don't know. I don't know. It would make sense that it should be there. I would hope it is there, and if not, when I get back today, we'll go back and check on that because it would be good to have that information there.
Yeah, okay, so if people are interested, the best thing to do is get in touch with Kathy, but do it before, what, say, May?
Yes, like I say, it needs to be done well before May 5th.
Okay.
So we're not a lot of time left.
Okay, very good. Well, that pretty well covers the April 7th meeting of the Board of Commissioners. What do we have coming up as a preview for the April 21st meeting?
It should be a lot shorter meeting than the April 7th one. Some issues there, typical issues on our annual and quarterly reports on finances and the different departments that have to report in, the public administrator and the comptroller and that sort of thing. There's 2 or 3 liquor board action items. I should have looked at where these were at, but I think the Clear Creek Golf Course is applying for a liquor license, and then there's special events, special entertainment for Main Street Gardenville, and Greater Genoa Business is also looking for some special events for 6 live entertainment events to be held. And I don't have all the details in this yet. I just know these things are coming down the road.
Well, it's a preview.
Yes. And then some Jerry's Grill, doing Bill's Jerry's Grill, and I don't know exactly where that's at. Oh, 1387 Highway 395 Gardenville. They're applying for a unrestricted on-site liquor license. And that's a liquor and entertainment board. And then in community development, it'll be the first reading of a second amendment. I get that clear. Of modifying the development agreement with Clear Creek Estates on the water line extension that's going down Foothill Road now, that's got kind of everything tore up. There's been some delays in trying to get right away, and we're working through that. That's held up the contractor being able to complete the pipeline. And once that's done, then we can kind of get that wrapped up too. So that's basically given a kind of a May to December extension on the development agreement, because we're just running in some issues that it might be a little timely to resolve. So, and then we have a typical in-house deal. We in our weed control operation, we've had to provide additional training under state law and federal law on different chemicals. So we've had to then have employees go through the training, and that, which has then led to a reclassification of their position based on that. So we have a reclass coming through for the weed control coordinator and creating that as a weed control supervisor. So there's an increase in compensation of that because of the extra additional requirements that person has. Pretty straightforward. And then there's a pretty simple thing, that working with Castle Crown Towers and Skyland to get some cell towers kind of moved around, so, and access to it and that sort of thing. So that's pretty straightforward. And then for presentations, there's the Amgen tour of California for the men's and women's stage. And you've just heard everything I know about that. Apparently it's a bicycle.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. So.
Yeah, we had sort of a mini tragedy. The first Amgen, which is it's a big deal, and they came, all these cyclists, and was supposed to take off from Tahoe, and it got the weather just made it impossible. So it was nice of the Amgen folks to come back again. They've come back a couple times now, so things have gone a lot better since then. But,
yeah, I think it's scheduled for May 19th.
Yeah.
So that's what I'm seeing here. And then there's some projects list with Western Nevada Development District, the Comprehensive Economic Development Strategy that's through the state, and that's the CEDS, C-E-D-S acronym on that. You'll hear quite a bit. And it's basically to look at the types of projects within Douglas County that might help job creation and that sort of thing. And if people or businesses come in and work in that area, then they're offered some tax credits for job creation. So it's kind of a what are we interested in kind of a program. So, and that's handled on an annual basis. And then we'll have another question of our own that's coming forward to the board for to them to look at the question, and that's the fuel indexing. Oh. There was a presentation a couple of meetings ago about indexing motor vehicle fuel with the petroleum price indexing and some other things, so that it keeps track and keeps pace with that. That'll be on the board for that question to go on the ballot in November, which will be a county ballot. Again, it's one of these, it's mandated to go statewide, And if it passes, I think statewide, or it all has to happen on the same election, and then maybe it's jurisdiction by jurisdiction that either can impose it or can't impose it basing on the results of the voting. A very complicated way of doing it, but we're making sure we meet all that. And what we want to do is write this question so that people could clearly understand what the cost impacts are. The way it was coming down from the statute, there was a lot of percentages, a lot of this, and so we're asking the board to take a specific number as opposed to a percentage at this stage, so that it's clearly, you get a sense if you vote for it, what the impact's going to be, and if you vote against it, why you're voting against it. So more to come on that one as well.
Okay, so that's the April 21st meeting up at Lake Tahoe.
Correct.
Okay. Well, Larry, I sure want to thank you for being here and sharing all the information here on the County Manager's Report. Appreciate it.
Yep.
And for Larry Werner, I'm Lloyd Higuera for the County Manager's Report, and we'll see you next time.